Go around the badger.
Hey everybody, it is TheAngryHoneyBadger here, and it is time for a champion build video. Today I am playing as Mordekaiser, who is honestly my favorite champion in the game. I know people ask that, so there you go. He was one of my first original kind of mains back in the day. I don't play him as much as I used to, but he's still got that special place in my heart. So we're going to talk about Mordekaiser today. I could probably talk about him honestly for hours, but we won't do that because that'd be crazy. So what we're going to start off with is runes and masteries first. So as for the rune page, I think there's a million options here depending on what kind of Mordekaiser you are going to play. But for the most part, we're going to take magic penetration marks. We're going to take actually scaling health seals or armor if you're up against an assassin AD. Then those are going to help, but scaling health is going to be really helpful just as the game goes on. And then we're going to take scaling AP glyphs. The other option for these would be cooldown reduction scaling glyphs. Very good on Mordekaiser. We'll talk about cooldown problems later on. And then we are going to be taking ability power quintessences. The only option here that you could swap those out with would be life over time, health regeneration. Can be very helpful actually early on in the game. Later on, not as important, but for the first 6 levels, they are actually pretty good on Mordekaiser just because you are using your health to cast skills or abilities. So just something to take note of. And then as for the masteries page, it's down in the lower right-hand corner. Pause the video if you want to check it out any longer. And let's move on to Mordekaiser's abilities. So, kicking things off, let's start with his passive. This is Iron Man. 35% of the damage dealt from abilities will be converted into a temporary shield absorbing incoming damage. The shield shield generation is only half as effective against minions, though. So maximum shield strength is blank towards blank. Shield decays at 3% per second, yada, yada, yada. So shield won't stay up forever. It is really, really good, though, for blocking damage, which allows you to harass them, get a shield up. If they harass back, you usually can negate most of it. So it's very important. And yes, like I stated, the shield regeneration is not as good, or the shield's effectiveness to get it up is not as strong against minions. You get more shield off of champions. That was one big nerf they did to him a couple seasons ago. That was pretty big. So we're just going to let the footage go crazy while we talk about abilities. At level 1, we're going to put a point into our Siphon of Destruction. This is your E ability. We're going to also be maxing this out first. Mordekaiser is going to deal damage in a cone in front of him, and it will be magic damage, and it does scale from ability power. This is a big source of damage. We're definitely going to max this out first. It scales really well from both AP and its base scaling. So Siphon of Destruction, that's where it's at. Then at level 2, we're going to put a point into our Mace of Spades. This is your Q ability. On hit, Mordekaiser is going to gain 75 bonus attack range, and he's going to swing his mace, and he's going to hit an enemy. If it strikes one and there's others around, it's going to spawn 3 additional, or hit 3 additional targets if they're close enough, dealing magic damage to them. If the if the target is alone, the ability is actually going to just do a bunch more increased damage. So if somebody's just alone by themselves and you hit them with it, it's going to hurt. So we're actually going to do it right now to the cow who's stuck in the pit who didn't have flash. So we're not going to burn any extra abilities on him. We're not going to use our ult, not going to use our ignite. We're just going to pick up an easy kill, not waste anything on him. Then at level 3 or 4, depending on if your jungler is going to gank or if you need the protection, put a point into your Creeping Death. This is your W ability. Now, your Creeping Death has been changed recently, which is awesome. You can protect you or yourself and an ally for 6 seconds. When you cast it on yourself, it'll pick whoever is the closest ally if they're in range, or if you pick an ally, it'll just cast it to yourself as well. You're both going to get the armor and magic resistance increase, and you're going to be able to deal some damage to any enemies that are around that shield at the time too. Now, if both of you have it on and you are running towards each other, or you run towards your ally who has it, or if they're running towards you, you will get an increase in movement speed. This is one of my new favorite changes to Mordekaiser because one of his big cons is he has no crowd control and he had no way to speed himself up. Now he has a way to actually speed himself up in or out of a fight or with an ally. So I just really like this mechanic. It really does help, and it's really nice. It doesn't do like crazy tons amounts of damage, but because we can buy Luden's Echo now, we can proc Luden's Echo with Creeping Death on an ally and deal damage from not even being in a fight. It's kind of awesome. Makes Mordekaiser even stronger, which is great. So we're going to max this one out last. And then we have your ultimate, which is Children of the Grave. We're going to obviously put points in this at 6, 11, and 16. Okay, so when you ult an enemy, you curse them, you are going to deal a percentage of the target's maximum health as magic damage over 10 seconds. You're going to do half of it right away, and then the other half over that 10 seconds. Now, if the target dies while they are cursed, the soul will be enslaved. You'll get to use them as a pet for 30 seconds. During this time, you will also gain 25% of their bonus health and 30% of their ability power. Meanwhile, the spirit gains 25, 50, and 100 attack damage and 15% of Mordekaiser's maximum health. So, you have options when it comes to ulting people. Now, typically, most people just think if I ult the enemy team's ADC, then I will have another ADC for my team. And yes, that's the priority I typically go for with Mordekaiser. Now, if the enemy ADC is super far behind and they're really not worth ulting, and they have a super fed LeBlanc or something, speaking of I'm going up against LeBlanc, if I kill LeBlanc, I get a bunch of her ability power. And the same thing goes with any tanks. If I kill a tank who has a ton of bonus health, a tank who uses Cinder Hulk right now and is getting a ton of bonus health, if I ult them and they die with it, I get a bunch of their bonus health. So, choose the target you want to ult because of how it will either help you in a fight or help your team out in a team fight. So, you have some legit options with Children of the Grave, which is a fantastic ultimate and can do crazy amounts of damage. And, definite pro here, Mordekaiser can turn a team fight from a 5v5 to a 6v4, which is completely unfair and super amazing. Because multiple times during this game, will enemy Callista, who's currently ahead, she will die to me and she will help me kill their team. Like, it's absolutely fantastic. Like, Mordekaiser's one of those champions where if you fall behind, it's unfortunate, but hopefully their ADC's fed, because I'll just kill it and have them kill the whole team for you. So, it's such a crazy concept. You can be behind and Mordekaiser's still relevant, kind of. It's weird. We'll talk about it more. Anyways, let's go to those items. We've been talking about abilities for a long time, but they're important because, I mean, that's the bread and butter to actually playing a champion is the abilities. To playing them correctly, that is. But let's talk about the items. So, we started off with boots and pots at level 1. I like boots and pots. The mobility is nice. You will be getting ganked as Mordekaiser since you are not that fast of a champion. You have no exact getaway besides a flash. You will probably get ganked. A little bit of movement speed does actually help. And we like the health pots. They're very helpful. Our abilities cost health, so we are going to want some health pots in case we are just, burning through our health and or getting harassed. The other option you have for a start would be cloth armor and pots if you're going up against an AD heavy assassin and they're going to trade with you a lot early on. You got to be careful. So that would be another option. Now, the first thing we buy when we go back to base will always be and forever be the Hex Tech Revolver. This essentially makes everything you cast free and you can get life actually back too with that 12% spell vamp. The ability power is also good. It's also not the most expensive item. You can usually get it on your first trip back if you've had an okay start to the game. So we're going to get the Hex Tech Revolver, but we won't build that into anything right away. We'll talk about its options in just a second. Now, when we move on to the next item, I immediately start to build the first part of my Luden's Echo, and I will finish my Luden's Echo as soon as I can. I think this item has really become huge on Mordekaiser. He really does just a ton of damage with it, and like I said, you can proc it with sending out a creeping death on an ally if they're jumping in on somebody, and you can get that extra damage off. It's like a big wombo combo, to be honest. It's really surprising damage too. It's just a lot for them to deal with. So Luden's great. Another great thing about Luden's too, old school Mordekaiser used to pretty much build, well, he didn't have to build straight tank, but old school tank Mord was hard to kill because he could build Warmogs and Force of Nature, and those two together would team up to give him non-stop health regen. And the Force of Nature back in the day had extra movement speed, which was super awesome on Mordekaiser for him to continuously chase down targets and use his Siphon of Destruction. And now that the Luden's Echo has more movement speed on top of it, that helps us feel even faster. So right now with our boots finished off, which are our sorcery shoes, and the Luden's Echo, we have 412 movement speed, which is going to be pretty much faster than every other mage in the game. So super, super awesome just combination. Makes us fast. We love it. And then, like I said, we can use Creeping Death on an ally and try to catch up when we're running behind them. We have 464 right now running to catch up to the Jarvan. So just, take note. So the next thing we will build, though, becomes very situational. And that's going to happen. So the next item I will typically try to build will be an Hourglass. An Hourglass is always just very helpful. Mordekaiser's pets can kill things while he's Hourglassed, let alone he can wait for his Children of the Grave to finish killing somebody if he's about to die with the Hourglass active. So just Hourglass. It's fantastic. I did rush, though, a little bit ahead of the Hourglass was the Abyssal Scepter. Now, Abyssal, I wouldn't even say is a really super core item all the time. It is helpful if they do have a lot of burst, and it does help with more penetration, of course. So it is a good item. I don't mind it at all, so we did pick that up because we could afford it. And LeBlanc, you know, it's LeBlanc. She'll hurt. We're not tanky. We're playing damage Mordekaiser, so that's a good thing to do. Now, the other option you can do if you really want to get some more beefy stats and get yourself some more cooldown reduction is you can pick up the Spirit Visage. Now, Spirit Visage is good because you do get the cooldown reduction. Something Mordekaiser, I wish there were better cooldown reduction items for him, honestly. But it'll give you some, it'll give you the health, and it'll give you magic to resist. And it'll help your Revolver give you health back with the unique passive on it too. So the Spirit Visage is a viable option if their team has more AP and you really want to help yourself with the health regen and some cooldown reduction. Now going back to cooldown reduction for just 1 second, there really aren't a lot of great cooldown reduction items for Mord. Now I know there is Will of the Ancients, which we will be picking up. The argument between Will of the Ancients and Gunblade are completely up to you. I've tried to justify both of them and I like them both equally for different reasons. Will of the Ancients is cheaper and does give me cooldown reduction. That's the reason why I like it more than Gunblade in this case, just because you can finish it faster, get more spell vamp, and get 10% cooldown reduction. The reason I hate Will of the Ancients is because it only gives you 10% cooldown reduction even after you finish the item off, and like it just doesn't feel that rewarding to get only 10% out of it. But it is a cheap item, so I'll let that go. Gunblade's a great item, honestly. It gives you good damage, and actual attack damage bonus on Mordekaiser will scale on his W, so you'll actually get more damage, so that's really good. Lifesteal's not a bad thing, I guess, to have. It has the active on it to slow people and deal damage. It's really, really good, and it's a great way to team up with your ultimate to kill people, to be completely honest. But it's just a little expensive. It costs 100 more gold than a death cap. So Hextech Gunblade Rush, it's doable, but it's really expensive. So that's one reason why I don't like it. So both items, like I said, have their places, but I will argue against them for different reasons. And then, so we finished off our Will because it's cheap and it gives us more spell vamp. And we did finish off our Hourglass. Now our final item, since you can see we already have 5 items, our final item that I'm going to pick up this game will be the Death Cap, which will increase our AP to just shy of 900 after this point because we haven't got that increased 30%. And 900 AP on Mordekaiser, just to give you a little reference of how much damage that is. At the end of the game, my Children of the Grave's base percentage is, I believe, 34% damage, plus the percentage of the ability power that you have, which is going to eventually be, I think, 70% of their health over the whole duration of your ult you could deal as damage to the champion. And that's not taking into effect their resists at all, but 70% of maximum health. That's so much damage, it's unbelievable. So, yeah, damage Mordekaiser is absurd. It's great. But like I said, if you get crowd control into the ground, and you can't get your shield up, your shield is what's keeping you alive through these team fights. I don't take damage because I can keep the shield up. And to keep the shield up, it helps to have more cooldown reduction. And this is why I hate that there isn't a great way to get to 40% cooldown reduction without running the CDR glyphs, and maybe even selling your boots and picking up CDR boots, and then getting a couple CDR items. So there's not like a great way, unfortunately, because Morella Nomicon, as much as you could buy it, if you really needed it, I mean, it could be there, but the mana regen is kind of a wasted stat. Luckily, the item isn't the most expensive, so there's a little bit of justification behind it, but it just, once again, not quite as worth it. So I wish there was one item, AP, that gives you a little bit more than what Will of the Ancients gives you, with a little bit more cooldown reduction. In fact, make Will of the Ancients cost 100 or 200 more gold and give me 10% more cooldown reduction, and I would be incredibly happy. But then you probably would make Mordekaiser even more broken than he is, but I guess that's a thing. So, but yeah, that's the build down below. A Void Staff would obviously be very, very helpful if the enemy team was building a lot of magic resist. But we have penetration in our runes and a little bit in our masteries. We have it with the Abyssal knocking down their resists. We also have it with our boots, so it's not terrible, but a Void Staff would go a long way if they were building a lot of magic resist. You could substitute it for a death cap. Obviously, your AP won't spike as high, but penetration can be more important than raw damage numbers if they are really, really stacking the crap out of magic resist. So just remember that. Make sure you ult good targets. That's very important. Try not to get crowd control into the ground. If you do get caught and die, that's a lot of damage off the table. So be careful, but harass them while you're in lane, outfarm them, get ahead, and you'll win a lot of games as Mordekaiser. Trust me, he is super fun to play. I'll see all of you guys in the next build video.